How's it going, ladies and gentlemen? My name is RuffledRowlit, and today we've got some Pokemon news, leaks, everything you guys can imagine. Let's talk about it right off the bat. So first things first, we're going to talk about this right here, which is the next 7-star Terra Raid battle event has been announced for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. This event will feature a battle against Blaziken with the Flying Terra type and the Mightiest Mark. Can only be caught once per save file. This event will run from, I guess, January 12th until, I guess, on January 14th. Again, from the January 19th until the 21st. So basically, it's going to be in a double period. It's going to be the first one is going to be around, it's going to be the Unrivaled Blaziken is going to be the 12th of January until the 14th. So this is going to be in about, well, 4 days from now. It's going to start the first one. It's going to have Speed Boost. In case you're curious, it's going to have Speed Boost, and it's going to be level 100 as per usual. It's a 7-star Black Terra Raid Crystal that you'll need to find with the Blaziken with the Flying Terra type. And they're going to do a second one, though. They're going to do a second one, which is specifically going to be, I'm going to move my camera in the middle here. The second one's going to be specifically on the 19th of January, and it's going to be until the 21st. It's the same thing, Speed Boost, level 100, Flying type, Terra type, so it's the same one. Again, as for this one, what you guys want to use, well, it could just really be a combination of a lot of different things, if I'm going to be honest, but you definitely want to go for, I would assume, a water type in this case, which you have a lot of variety from that. I even think Walking Wake might be decent for this. But again, this isn't really going to be the video where I'm going to be explaining what the best choices are. Instead, I just want to inform you on this piece of news, as I think it's worthwhile. And also, keep in mind, guys, there are still a few more valid mystery gifts you guys can get your hands on before they are done. You can still get the Like a Flute one. It's until the 31st of August. You can also get the Sweet or Spicy one, the Team Star one, the See You in Paldea one. I'm going to just scroll through here. And you can also get the We Are the Terrastall Cap one as well as the super effective Gotta Catch Pokemon and the final one right here. So all of these you can still get your hands on. There is a bunch of them actually, elapsed now, but that is that for that. Let's move now on to something a little bit more intriguing, which is going to be about this post right here. This post is by Something Else, and also a big shout out to HTV, by the way, because he was the actual person to cover this first in a video, because I just came back from vacation, so I haven't actually seen a lot of this stuff, but this is about Nintendo Switch 2, and what this could mean for Pokemon, right? So here's what they basically are talking about. So, Andrus Restart, something that's gone under the radar recently, but is pretty big, is some Japanese devs, so Japanese developers over in Japan, openly stating their excitement for new hardware next year. Some even straight up say Nintendo. So, this is rather like what we're talking about here. It's, I think, a article of sorts coming in, which specifically talks about a bunch of different developers from a bunch of different studios within Japan that are all going to be getting their hands on some sort, or actually excited rather, for some new hardware that they're expecting next year, aka this year, in 2024, which is really intriguing, because this was posted back in 2023, and we could translate the whole page if we want to, but it's going to be, poor grammar, so that's why I'm going to take something else on their word here and their translation instead. But basically, it's just a bunch of different studios. Watermelon Game, this year was a year that a large number of games were released, etc., but the interesting point is this point right here, that here's Resident Evil's producer from Capcom, Masao Kawada, who says, scroll down to question 4, 2024 aspiration. Deep L is much better translation service, I guess Deep Learning is much better translation service that I used for the relevant bit below. So I guess they translated this using, I guess, like an AI. 2024 will also bring new consoles and more indie titles to look forward to. Interesting. Above is Masao Kawada, a Resident Evil producer. I'm guessing RE, I would assume, is Resident Evil. Below is from Kenichi Ogasawara and Koei Tecmo's bottom of the page under Attention. Nintendo's new platform has been the focus of much attention, apparently from them. So this is from Famitsu. It's an article you guys can jump over to as well if you want to. Again, you guys can go check these things out yourself if you don't, trust my word on it, or if you want to read into it yourself, or if you don't trust the translations and stuff. But this is a Famitsu article, and basically what they say is, next is from Fumiko Yasuda, also KT under the 8th picture, Koei Tecmo, I guess. We look forward to seeing what new gaming platforms and their titles will bring to the table. So, again, gaming platforms. It seems like a lot of pointing and gesturing towards new consoles, new platforms, new places to play, rather than, new games in itself, which could, again, be about the Switch, right? Because what we're all expecting for the next Switch, what everybody's expecting for the Switch 2, isn't for it to be, like, a big leap. We're not expecting a leap like we had from, let's say, let's say like this, the Nintendo 3DS to the Switch, or from like the Wii U to the Switch or whatever. Like, we're not expecting a massive leap. Instead, we're expecting something similar to, like, the DS to the 3DS, or, I guess, like, yeah, it's, I guess, the best way you could put it, or the Game Boy to the DS. That's a big jump, right? Like, a Game Boy to the DS, it's a big leap. It was a bit different console, different fidelity, could handle way more, was way stronger. That was a big leap. But what we're expecting here is something more similar to the DS to the 3DS, because the DS couldn't really play fully fledged 3D games. It had a few of them, but they were very limited in scale. I think there's actually a really cool horror game. I can't remember what it was called though, Condemned or something. I could be wrong, but it was a really cool horror game that was 3D that was on the DS and not the 3DS. And there's like, I think a lot of games that just couldn't really be played on the DS because it just wasn't strong enough. And the 3DS made up for some of those limitations by allowing us to have a lot of 3D games, a la Pokemon. Like X and Y was able to exist because of the 3DS, because they couldn't do something like X and Y on the DS. It just couldn't handle that level of graphics, which now if you think back, it's not really that crazy, but it's just because the DS was so weak in comparison. So, what you need to expect with the Switch 2, whatever it's going to be called, is something similar. We're not going to have a massive leap. Rather, we're going to have an incremental leap, right? We're going to have something like the 3DS and the DS, right? A jump like that. From DS level of, you know, I guess, hardware to a 3DS level of hardware. That's basically what I'm assuming from this. But going on further down, last one is Yusuke Kataka from Spike Soft, second picture. There are rumors of a new Switch, and I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of machine it will be. Interestingly, though, he talks about there being rumors about it, so I guess it's 4chan stuff, but, very strange. All 4 quotes translated by Deep L, and only relevant bits. We are now at the point that even third-party devs are getting antsy and openly hyping and showing excitement for Nintendo's next system. One even refers to it as the new Switch. So I guess here are the posts, right? So again, we're going to go in the order here. We've got Capcom, right? Let's just make sure my camera is not in the way. So Capcom, Masao Kawada, 2024 will also bring new consoles and more indie titles to look forward to. Yeah, again, new consoles. What would that be? I know there's talks about a new Xbox console coming out, and I know PlayStation is like putting out iterations of the PS5. Then you got Kenichi Ogasawara, who says Nintendo's new platform has been the focus of much attention. Koei Tecmo's Fumihiko Yasuda says we look forward to seeing what new gaming platforms and their titles will bring to the table. Again, new gaming platforms. And then finally, Spike-chun literally says there are rumors of a new Switch, and I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of machine it will be. Strange. They're all talking about new platforms, new platforms. Of course, these interviews are longer, and there's probably more in there than just that. But I think it's worthwhile to bring up and at least mention. So shout out again to Something Else for actually sharing this. And I think it's really cool just to see that, like, even producers of these games are excited for what the next, like, hardware and consoles are actually going to bring. Like, it's just exciting to see that even their excitement is there and even they're hyped about it. But I just think it's, like, pretty awesome. So that pretty much summarizes that. Next up, though, we're going to be talking about a few other things, because we do have a lot of stuff that was about Pokemon, you know, the next games for Pokemon. And I also want to talk about specifically this post and what this means for Pokemon, because let's put it like this. There's going to be a new Pokemon game this year. But whatever Pokemon game is coming out for this year is not going to be, and it's most likely going to be a new game. And we're going to get the announcement for it on Pokemon Day, which is not very far away, guys. We've got about 2 months until it's here. And actually less than 2 months if you think about it, because it is on the 27th of February, if I'm not mistaken. It's always on the 27th. So it's right at the end of February, right? 27th of February is when it's coming out. And if you think about that, if you think about when that is, it's not too far away. We're not like, you know, it's not like a massive amount of time left until then. It's very soon. It's about two months, which means we're going to see the reveal very, very, very soon. But whatever that game is, it's not going to be on the Nintendo Switch 2, because we don't even have the Switch 2 announced. We don't even know what the new console is going to be. But whatever comes beyond that might go on there. Because remember, something about Pokemon you have to remember is that Pokemon has always been a little bit, like, I want to say about a year behind with every new generation console. So, like, every time a new console generation starts, they've always been a little bit behind, and they didn't used to be on the mainline consoles, always on, like, the handheld ones from Nintendo, but they've always been behind a little bit, right? Even when, like, you know, like, the 3DS first came out, like, if we look up the actual release date, like, of the 3DS, so, like, 3DS release dates, let's see, so the 3DS came out in 2011, February 26, 2011. The first Pokemon game to release on the 3DS was Pokemon X and Y in 2013, 2 years later, okay? Literally 2 years later is when it released. So please keep in mind that just because a new console gets announced doesn't really mean that Pokemon's going to be on it right away. It could take at least a year or two. I would say minimum a year, because when they released the Nintendo Switch, so if we look up the Nintendo Switch, like, release date, so that came out, like, I think 2017, right? Yeah. So March 2017 is when it came out. I'm going to put this on the screen here. You guys can see what I'm looking at. So it came out in March 2017. Now, remember, the first Pokemon game for the Switch came out a whole year later. I'm going to almost say more than a whole year later, because it took it, like, all of it. Like, so think about it. This came out in 2017, March. You got all that year, the rest of the year, for things to get ready with no new Pokemon game. Besides, I don't know if we had, like, any spin-offs, because no, at the time of 2017, I think that's when we had Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon releasing on the previous console, and only the year next year, like in 2018, I want to say around, I think in 2018, around, November, we got, like, Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, which was the first Pokemon games on the Nintendo Switch. So it took a whole year, a year and a half almost, right, before we got our first Pokemon game on the console. So keep in mind, if the Switch 2 does get, like, announced, if we do have the Switch 2, on the agenda next year, or this year, sorry, if it does get announced this year, we're not going to see a Pokemon game at least until next year, or if not next year, the year after that. Because, again, they might announce the console this year, but it might not release this year. It might release in 2025 in March, the same way as we just looked at Nintendo Switch, right? It came out in March, which is a very weird month, right? Because a lot of people were, like, confused that they weren't going to release it for, like, the Christmas period, to get in on, like, the holiday hype and all that kind of stuff. They didn't do that, so a lot of people were very much confused about how that was all going to work. So I'm just curious what you guys think, because I personally am going to say it like this. I do not expect us to see anything to do with like, a Nintendo Switch, with Pokemon related at least. I'm not expecting that this year. Like, I do not expect it. Until this console is announced, there will be at least a 1.5 year, at least a year period before we get a actual Pokemon game on it. I think by now, the actual first Pokemon game for the Nintendo Switch 2 is being developed. And, again, like I said, the Switch 2, I wonder if it's going to be such a, like, is it going to be a, like, such a big leap that it's going to be a new console where they're going to demand you to kind of get new games for it, and you're not going to be able, like, how's, backwards compatibility? Like, am I going to be able to play my old Pokemon games on it? Is that going to work? Is that not going to work? There's a lot of questions like that I personally have, which which we don't know if they're going to be answered or not, but I do think you have to kind of look at this game a little bit differently, and you have to look at all of this stuff a little bit differently than you do with really any other stuff that you kind of, like, look at. Because, like, the previous generations, the iterations kind of made things a little bit complicated, because you couldn't really interact between a 3DS and a DS that much. There wasn't really that much interaction, and there wasn't really that much. I mean, you had compatibility, but there was, like, there was only compatibility in the beginning, and then it kind of, like, stopped being a thing after over, a certain amount of time, especially when they started making the iterations of the 3DS, right? So I think with the Switch 2, we should expect a similar thing, right? A Switch to a new Nintendo Switch, right? Literally, that's what people are calling it for fun. Just like there's a new Super Nintendo, so the SNES, right? Because you have first, new entertainment system, or, the Nintendo Entertainment System. Now you have the, Super Nintendo Entertainment System, and, etc. But basically, the Super Switch, whatever you want to call it, the Super Nintendo Switch, that could be like the SNS. I guess that's what they could go for. But what I'm going to say is this. Whatever does end up happening, whatever iteration is going to be, we're going to have to wait a while for Pokemon to get an update for it and to get its own new game on it. And I am worried about compatibility. Will we be able to play our old Pokemon games on this new console, or will this be a case where, like, we will be in the first version of the new Switch, of the Switch 2. The first version of it will allow for that, but then the further, versions, like the further you go in, will not allow it anymore. Like, is that the case we're looking at here? I don't know, but we're going to have to wait and see. So that pretty much summarizes that. Now let's move on to some of the other topics. So first of all, we have this post here that's been made by none else than Soul Silver Art, and he's got a few different things to say. So we're going to start with this original post here. Did you know that we actually got 2 Serpentine Dragon Pokemon into Indigo Disc? Arcaludon might just seem like a bridge piece of metal, but it's actually a long dragon, and you can't change my mind. Which, no, he's right, though. It is a bridge, but it is also a dragon. There's no, like, it does look a little bit like a dragon. That's undeniable. And of course, we can't really forget about, Hydrapple as well. It says, reaching part 2. Sure, a connection to Unova makes sense, but let's look at the other side of the coin. Out of all the colors of the Game Freak could have chosen for the shinies of these 2 new Scarlet and Violet Pokemon, their shinies are primarily gold and silver. Yes, so this is the shiny of Hydrapple, which is a very interesting color. And then, of course, the shiny of this fella. Now, it is a bit interesting because the color is, like, silver and kind of bluish, which does fit perfectly with the silver and blue you kind of have with Pokemon Silver version. And over here, you got the green, the green, the yellow, the orange. You got the green, the yellow, the orange. It is perfect. Again, it is just literally perfect. And you can also see here a post from none else than Kuro Blitz. Shout out to Kuro, by the way. He's actually a member of our podcast now. We're running a podcast over on Ruffled Leaks on that channel. We have a podcast called The Daily Dose of Pokemon Podcast. If you guys want to go there and check it out, please do subscribe to that channel. But here's what he said. Hydrapple, it's Ho-Oh, which is basically Flapple is Raikou, Appleton is Entei, and Dipplin is Suicune. Kieran is basically a Usain who's wronged as he believed he should be the chosen of such legendaries due to the knowledge and kinship alone. This means Arcaludon is a parallel to the Beta Silver mascot. So this is like the original versions of like Silver characters. Like basically, this is like the original Pokedex, the proto Pokedex, right? Like the old one, which is pretty cool to see. Like all these connections can come back to kind of haunt us in a messed up way later down the line. But yeah, so that was one of the things that we talked about. He also had a few other posts like for example, there was an update here on Pokemon Home over version 3.2.1. They changed the icon, so that actually happened. They seem to do a lot of that, and a lot of people hate it because they seem to like remove a lot of, how would you put it? A lot of liveliness from a lot of the models. Like, for example, if you look there in Hitmontop, right, on the side here, the 3.2 version just looks less lively, doesn't have that same, like, cool pose, and they kind of ruined it, to be honest. And I don't get why they did that. Like, they looked fine. I don't know why they had to change this. Like, all of these looked great, but then they changed it for some reason. It just makes no sense. It's just a small thing, but they changed it. So, even Soul says, they did it before, too. But this time, it's still bittersweet for me because while it's nice to get new art, the older ones are mostly better and we'll probably never see the older ones again, which is true. They're gone. We're not going to see them again, which is just unfortunate more than anything. Next up is actually a really cool thing. So in the actual anime, one of these is Zygarde in the anime, others Baby Terrapagos in the anime. If you didn't know better, I've been making some wild theories off of this. The similarity is uncanny as these two orbs kind of like fusing together. But then he says, it's interesting that the Terrarium orb actually looks very similar to the force field Terrapagos creates in the Annie-Poke, or Pokemon anime. It also is hilarious that even though the shield was mentioned on the official Scarlet and Violet website, it has no importance in the Indigo Disc story at all. It doesn't even appear in the game. We thought it would be the orb underneath Terrapagos, but it seems that it's the stellar form is meant to be something entirely else entirely. It seems that it's just something made up for the Pokemon anime, just like whatever was going on with Zygarde here too, lol. I just wonder if at least the Terrarium orb might be connected to Terrapagos' shield in the future anime Pokemon episodes. And of course, that is the giant orb that you guys see at the top of the school. Now, interestingly about this orb, it will actually not be glowing green. It will be, I think, brownish colored, and I think Kayla Capsule did a great video on this, and I think she covered this on Twitter as well. But basically, this thing isn't even glowing if Briar hasn't brought water and I think crystals from the crystal pool in Kitakami. This thing won't even be glowing, which is a really cool little detail they had included there, which I think is pretty awesome. But let's move on to the next thing. Here is just, again, about the whole connection. So you guys may remember that we have these two, like, locations in Pokemon Black and White. You've got the Black City and the White Forest, I think, the White Tree, whatever. The White Forest, I think. But yeah, you got those two. And interestingly, yeah, of course, you know, Arcaludon fits perfectly with the Black City reference. And then, you know, we have this fellow over here, which fits perfectly the other way. And, again, it just perfectly seems like a nice connection between the two of them. And here we can also look at what he says here. Reaching part 1. Out of all the Pokemon Game Freak could have chosen, these two were the two Pokemon they chose to give new Dragon-type evolutions to in Unova, which is such a weird specific choice because you've got the whole Hydrapple, the Big Apple, you know, New York, all that kind of stuff. You know, Arcaludon being the literal bridge from Black and White. You know, I mean, it's just like a lot of interesting, you know, connections. It's a lot of that kind of stuff happening here, which is very intriguing. And that's not all, though. They even foreshadowed possibly the actual Synchro Machine might have been foreshadowed back in X and Y. Once again, we see that Game Freak have IDs years in advance before they actually implement those IDs in new Pokemon games. And actually, it seems they've had this ID since the beginning with Bill in Red and Blue. I love this find. So here you can see Synchro Machine foreshadowing. This is from Icarus Star 1. So shout out to Icarus Star for this one. A device that lets you become a Pokemon. Would anyone want to do that? And again, he's right about Bill, by the way, because Bill literally turned himself into a Pokemon back in the original red, blue, green, yellow, etc., right? That's literally what he did, and that's when you had to go find him, save him, and he would give you the SSN ticket, which is, again, is pretty nuts. So again, it's just a lot of different references, a lot of different hints, a lot of different connections of sorts that you can find in here, which I think is really cool. And then, of course, we had, again, the, the actual, giant orb, which is another really cool thing, is that I didn't even realize this, but Soul actually noticed this, which is, for example, in Times Square, you know, on New Year's, there's the whole ball drop, right? And if you look at Hydrapple, you can actually see that it kind of resembles it a little bit, right? Like how this thing is going down, like this ball goes down before New Year's. It kind of looks the same as the apple going down Hydrapple's head, which wouldn't be that crazy of a connection to make. Like, honestly, it might seem like a far-fetched, but they do this kind of small stuff. So here it says, it's still New Year's Eve in the States, and there's another possible detail about Hydrapple's design related to New York City and Unova, because, of course, Unova is based mostly around New York and that kind of, that area. For decades, there's been a popular traditional countdown to the New Year when they drop a ball in New York City, and many people watch it from home. The little apple on Hydrapple's horn looks very similar to this. It's pure speculation, but this could really be a sweet little detail inspired by the New York City, you know, New Year's Eve ball drop in NYC, especially with the connection of Hydrapple being a Hydra in a big apple, and New York City, again, you know, in the Blueberry Academy, where Hydrapple was first introduced, is nicknamed the Big Apple. So yes, it just totally makes sense. It's just a really cool connection, and I thought I would just share that one as well with you guys, because I thought it was just worthwhile to bring it up. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, there is a lot of different stuff like this, so I want to just kind of go through this all again really quickly with you guys. Again, shout out to Soul for sharing a bunch of this stuff, but I just want to quickly go through these points again. So, first of all, guys, make sure to go get your hands on the, you know, Blazikens. They're going to be out on the 12th. I'm going to make a video about that too. I'll be making a whole video talking about that, so don't worry about that. We'll be making a video on that too. But we got that. Don't forget to also get yourself the mystery gift. Then, of course, there is a Switch 2. Now, I've already said this. I'm going to say this again. The Switch 2, the whole thing with it, I'm very excited to see what's going to happen. I'm very excited to see how it's going to turn out. But I'm also very curious to know, like, how is this thing going to even, you know, be like, what's it gonna be like as a console? Is it gonna be a big leap, or is it gonna be just a hardware update? Because I think the biggest thing that most people want, they don't want a new iteration. We don't need a Wii U of the Switch, right? What we need, or what people want, I think, is literally just a performance increase, right? Like, make the console better, make it at least parallel to, like, because I think if you compare, like, something I really want to get my hands on, but I'm too poor right now because I can't afford anything, but what I really want to get is the Steam Deck, right? If you look at the Steam Deck, which is the, you know, basically, like, I guess, you know, Valve's, you know, answer to the Switch, this is a literal computer in your hands, and this thing can handle games really well, okay? It can play, like, fully fledged games, you know, from Steam without too much hassle. It's a literal computer in your hands, and it's really good. It's really, really, really cool. I've tried it out in stores and stuff. It's really sick. The only issue is, right, that Nintendo hasn't achieved the same level, at least not with the Nintendo Switch. But the Nintendo Switch opened the doors for a lot of this stuff, because they saw, like, a lot of companies saw the potential in handheld again, because handhelds had been kind of left to the side. I think the Nintendo DS was like, and then, you know, the 3DS were kind of like the side gigs, and like the PSP and the PS Vita were not that successful. They were just kind of side, you know, accessories and side consoles that people didn't really think about that much. This, I feel like the Switch is the first big mainline console, because keep in mind, there is no other Nintendo console. This is it. Like, the Switch is the home console and your portable console. It's 2-in-1, which is what makes it so cool, and it just kind of gave all these other companies the push to be like, hey, we should all make stuff like this too. And what that also does is it pushes Nintendo to be like, shit, we gotta make a console so that people, that's strong enough so that people who don't want to play just Nintendo games, because I'm gonna be real with you, there are a lot of people who don't give a flying F about Nintendo games. They just don't care, okay? I know a lot of people that I know personally that are friends of mine that do not care about Pokemon, that do not care about any of this, but they love playing PC games. They love playing other, like, third part, like, you know, AAA games and indie games and stuff like that. Like, one of my friends, he loves to play Formula 1. And, you know, I think he would love to have it on, you know, on his hands, so he doesn't have to sit by the TV all the time or the computer. Just have it on hand really quickly when he's out and about, or when he goes on a trip somewhere. I think that would be sick for him. And I think there's a lot of people like that that want to play games that just cannot run on the Switch. It's just too weak. If they can even achieve the Steam Deck level of power, if they can achieve that, even if it price bumps it, I would be fine with it, as long as it means I can have access to more games, and I can get more games that aren't just Nintendo only, because of course the Nintendo only games are gonna be on there no matter what. But, like, also think about it, if they can do good, maybe Game Freak can finally make a Pokemon game that doesn't lag and have a shit ton of, you know, like, stuttering issues and low FPS and stuff like that. hopefully, because I have experienced a ton of low frame rates in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. It's been awful. I love the game. I really love Scarlet and Violet. I think there's some of the best Pokemon games we've had in a long time, next to like Legends Arceus, which I think is amazing. But like, there is issues with it, okay? There's so many issues with it that need to be fixed, that need to be resolved, and, you know, and stuff like that. And I think a lot of that also comes from the lack of decent performance on the Switch, because the Switch isn't perfect, but also, like, a stronger console will not solve poor programming. Let's put it like that. Just because they make a console that's stronger doesn't mean the Pokemon games will run faster on it, but it can, because the proof of that exists in emulators. People have made emulators that run Pokemon, you know, Scarlet and Violet at 60 frames a second without any issues, and they run it without stuttering and problems, stuff like that. And so it's a mix of Game Freak not being the best at programming, or at least like making decent code and just making sure that like the game functions properly with the hardware that it's on. It's a mix of that, but also on the other hand, it's the problem being them not 100% having a good console to work with, right? Because if you don't have a strong enough console, you're not going to be able to do the most with it. But then again, you have Breath of the Wild and you have Tears of the Kingdom on the console and they work fine. I don't think I experienced any issues with them myself. So, yeah, it's a bit of a sore point. But either way, that's pretty much it, guys. I want to thank you all for watching this video. And of course, with everything else, it's just cool little references. And I want to ask you guys right here, too. Just let me know in the comment section down below. When do you expect the Switch 2? Do you guys want to see, I guess, Pokemon, Pokemon Gold and Silver remakes? Or do you want to see Unova this year? Which one of those things do you guys want to see today, this year in 2024? Let me know, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace out, and bye-bye, ladies and gentlemen.